Hello guys, welcome back to once again on a session for AZ-103. Today we are going to cover module 04, which is of virtual networking. Now in this module we are going to talk about virtual network. We will also talk about IP addressing and endpoints. We'll see what Azure DNS is, and we'll then talk about network security group. So 4 lessons are there within this, and then we'll discuss certain review questions. So let's start with lesson 1, which is virtual networks. In this lesson, we are going to talk about different components of a virtual network. What actually are virtual network and how you can create subnets. How do you implement virtual network? Then I'll show you a demonstration in which you will be creating a virtual network. And finally, I'll be discussing about how you can use multiple NICs or network interface card in virtual machines. Then again, a demonstration with multiple VMs, which will create, then there will be a demonstration in which I will show you how to create a VM with multiple NICs. So let's talk about Azure networking components. First of all, what is Azure Virtual Network, right? You might be wondering about it. So we know that when we talk about cloud, what does cloud helps us with? Cloud says that instead of having your own infrastructure, you can host your infrastructure on our data center. That's what Microsoft Azure, that's what AWS and all other cloud technology says. Now, in the infrastructure, networking is a very big part, right? So when we talk about networking, we are talking about everything from the cables to the routers to the switches to uh, to the routing configuration you define, the algorithm you use, everything which is there related to networking, all of them can be included inside the infrastructure, and that can be shifted to the cloud. So Microsoft says if you want a managed infrastructure for your networking where you don't have to directly deal with all the different cables, all the different uh, routers, switches, and their configuration, their algorithms. If you do not want to worry about all of these things, I'll give you managed networking service, which will be hosted completely on our data centers. You don't have to worry about it, and you can go ahead and use it just like you use it inside your own environment with a few clicks here and there. So adopting cloud solutions can save time and simplify operations. Why do you need to create your own infrastructure for networking when you have one available on Microsoft Azure, right? So small and mid-sized companies, for them it is quite appealing that they should go to cloud. Why? Because they usually do not have that much time or money to create a big infrastructure involving all of the networking components. So they simply go to Azure and they say, you already have the infrastructure created, take my money and let me start with the networking which I want to have, right? Azure requires the same type of networking functionality as an on-premises infrastructure. With few changes here and there, the networking on Azure is not different from the networking that you get inside your on-premises solution. The networking is still the same. It still uses the same IP address range. It still uses the same subnet, and that's what you should be concerned about. There are a few changes here and there which I will let you know in a while. Azure networking offers a wide range of services and products. So on the left hand side, I'm not sure whether it is quite clear to you or not, but there is a lot of component in Azure virtual network. There is the virtual network itself, load balancer, Azure DNS, application gateway, VPN gateway, express route, content delivery network, traffic manager, network watcher. So nine of them are given on the right hand side in this image, but there are many more which you will get inside the book, which I will share with you. But there are many more components. As of now, we'll focus on the first component of Azure networking, which is virtual network. So what is a virtual network? A virtual network is a logical representation of your own network in the cloud. Think of this. Let me go with a diagram here. So I'm going to my paint, and how do you see a network, right? A network is a logical grouping within which subnets are created, right? So let's suppose this is your usual network that you create, right? And it has an address space of 192.168.1.0/16. Okay. Before coming to this module, make sure you have the basic understanding of network. That means you should know what a network IP address space is, what are subnets, what is a CIDR, and all the related information, all the basic information about networks. If you do not have the basic information, I would say first get that and then jump onto this module. So this is what a network is, right? A network is basically a, a grouping of IP address space, right? Within the network, you can create multiple subnets. Now, what are subnets again? Subnets are basically bifurcation of network into smaller networks, right? So for us, 192.168.1.0/16 might be a very big CIDR, might be a very big address space. So we say that let's create multiple subnet and let's just divide it into smaller networks. Why do we create subnets? Because subnets helps in better security, better segregation of a network. That's why we create it. Okay. So in Azure, the same approach is used. Azure says the same way that you create a that you create a network within your on premises, in the same way you can create virtual network on cloud. You can give an IP address space and it will be created. Within that, you can create the subnets in the same way that you create it inside your on-premises environment. There is no difference between the two of them, right? And within the subnet, you can deploy your virtual machines. It's as simple as that. So a virtual network is basically an IP address space, nothing more, which is deployed in Azure infrastructure. Within this IP address space, you can define certain subnets based upon your requirements, and within the subnets, you deploy virtual machines, right? Let's go back to the diagram which I was showing to you. So this was the diagram. The same diagram I have shown to you. I told you that there is a virtual network. Virtual network is simply an IP address range. Within the virtual network, you can have subnets, and within the subnets, you can deploy your virtual machines. There is one more component which is known as NIC, which we will discuss later on. But let me just show you that as well in the diagram. So all virtual machine has an independent Azure resource connected to them, which is known as a network interface card. Why do we need a network interface card with a VM? Because the IP address which is assigned to a VM is not actually assigned to the VM. The IP address is attached to your NIC. So let's suppose you have a virtual machine and its IP address is 192.168.1.5. That IP address is attached to the network interface card, and the network interface card is then attached to the VM. So that is why a network interface card is required. Network interface card is an independent resource in Azure, just like a virtual network, just like a virtual machine, just like a IP address. Network interface card is also an individual, independent resource. That means if I want to reuse this IP, instead of you know deleting this NIC, deleting this VM, I can simply detach this NIC from the VM and simply attach it to another VM. So if I simply detach it from here, right, from VM1 and attach it to, let's say, VM2 in here, now the VM2 will have the IP of 192.168.1.5 because IP is attached to NIC and NIC is then attached to the VM. Okay, they are interrelated. So what is a virtual network? It's a logical representation of your own network. You can create a dedicated private cloud only virtual network. Dedicated private cloud only virtual network means the network which is available only on Azure. Sometimes what happens, sometimes you are just moving to the cloud, you do not have anything on premises, and in that kind of scenario, whatever infrastructure you are creating on cloud. So in that kind of scenario, a virtual network that you are going to create, it will be created only on cloud. So that is why it is known as private cloud only VNet. But sometimes you have to securely extend your data center with VNets. What does it mean? It means Alright, you have a virtual network on Azure. Let's suppose this is the virtual network, but you also have an on-premises environment. Let's say this is your on-premises environment where you are already using a virtual network, sorry, a network of your own. Maybe here you are using 10.1.0.0/16, this IP address range. Okay, now there might be machines, there might be computers within this network that you are using inside your on-premises environment, which may want to communicate to the virtual network which is available on cloud, right? This is called as extending your on-premises data center to the cloud. Now, when you want this kind of a scenario, in this kind of scenario, what you need is some sort of a way by which you can connect your on-premises network to the network that you have created on Azure. In that kind of scenario, we make use of different technologies like site-to-site VPN, express route, etc., which we'll discuss later on. But just remember, you can connect your on-premises network to Azure Virtual Network. That is possible. And your machines inside your on-premises network, once this network connection is established, will be able to communicate with the virtual machines on Azure in a virtual network. Okay. And the third one is enable hybrid cloud scenario. When I say hybrid cloud scenario, I meant the same thing. So hybrid cloud scenario means this VNet gives you the flexibility to support a range of hybrid cloud scenario. For example, you can connect it to any of your on-premises application as well. We'll discuss more about this later on. Okay, let's talk about the subnet now. What is a subnet? I've already given you an idea about it. I told you that a virtual network can be segmented into one or more subnet. So subnets are nothing, it's smaller division of a big network. So networks are usually bigger in range. For example, the network that I have chosen, 192.168.1.0/16, it might have 65,536 IPs available within the same within the same address space. So that makes this network very big. So to segregate or to segment your network into smaller segments, we use the concept of subnets. Subnet makes it easier to logically divide your network. When your network is logically divided, uh, it is easier to manage. Think of this: you have a big network with 65,536 IP address, and then you divide it into smaller subnets which have, let's say, 60 IPs or 70 IPs or 80 IPs, etc. So that will be more efficient to manage rather than managing a big network, right? You can also create subnets to help improve security, increase performance, and make it easier to manage the network. When you have a smaller network, it becomes easier for you to manage them as well. It becomes easier for you to have an increased performance because now you have different subnets for uh, different requirements. Okay. Each subnet must have a unique address range which cannot overlap with other subnets in the virtual network in the subscription. I am going back to my same diagram which I have shown you before, which is right here. One second, right here. So this was your virtual network 192.168.1.0, and it has a subnet which is 192.168.1.0/24 that I'm using. Similarly, I will create other subnets as well. For example, this is subnet 2 with a different IP address range, and this is subnet 3. In many scenarios, having different subnets helps you a lot. For example, let's suppose I have this virtual network, and within this is my subnet 1. I can make this subnet as my web tier subnet where I can deploy virtual machines which have web applications installed on them. I have segregated that. That's one use of having a subnet, that is segregating your infrastructure within the virtual network. Subnet 2 I can call as app subnet, and here I can put my virtual machines which have applications installed on them. And subnet 3 I can call as database tier or database subnet, where I can keep those virtual machines on which I have a database installed, right? So this Imagine if we do not have the concept of subnet, will we be able to do this kind of segregation, do this kind of segmentation? No, it was not possible at that time. So that is why we have subnets, the concept of subnets within networks, which allows us to segment our, you can say our virtual network inside Azure. Okay. All right. Now moving on, there is one thing that I wanted to tell you in here. Each subnet within a virtual network by default can talk with each other. So this subnet can talk to this subnet can talk to this subnet, and all three of these subnets can talk with each other. Okay, so within a virtual network, Microsoft has designed the network in such a way that all the subnets within a virtual network can talk with each other. Remember this. When we'll come to route tables, I will show you why this thing is important. So mark my words over here. All the subnets within a virtual network can by default talk with each other. When I say talk with each other, that simply means that a VM in web tier can communicate with the VM in app subnet, and the VM in app subnet can communicate with database tier, and vice versa. Okay, just remember this. All right, moving on. How do you implement a virtual network? What are the different settings which are needed when you are creating a virtual network? For that, I'll be jumping onto my Azure portal. And to create a virtual network, you can write virtual network in the search button. I have shown you this before as well. Search for the virtual network service, or go to all services, and from there search virtual network, right? Or if it is already marked as your favorite, it will be available on the left hand side. Click on this and then click on add. Okay, I first need to give this virtual network a name, so I will say my virtual network. IP address space, make sure you give any private IP address space in here. Okay, so 192.168.1.0/16. If I choose let me see, okay, let me choose this one. So if I'm choosing this IP address range 192.168.0.0/16, you can see I have been given 65,536 addresses. I'll use my Azure subscription in here, which will be by default in your case Azure free account. Resource group, I already have two, but let me create a new one. If you already have a resource group, that is fine. Otherwise, you can create a new one. My resource group, which was my RG, I have deleted it because be very careful about what resources you are creating on Azure, guys. If you are not deleting your resource groups time to time, it will cost you a lot of money and your free account will be gone, right? So whatever resources you are creating, make sure you clean them after you are done with them. Okay, that's why I deleted my older resource group, my RG. So I'm creating a new one from here itself. Location is East US. It is going to create a subnet. Let's name it as subnet 1 instead of default, and then give a address range of here as well, which will be 192.168.1.0/27. Let's say this is my address space for my subnet, which will give me 32 addresses ranging from 1.0 to 1.31. DDoS protection. Do you want this virtual network to be protected from distributed denial of service attacks? You can choose between basic or standard in here. You don't have to go in deep about what DDoS is as of now. It's basically an attack which might affect your network, right? In other words, distributed denial of service, in very simple word, if I explain it to you, DDoS attack is the attack in which there is a lot of requests coming to your environment, and these are not valid requests. These are just created by some hacker or an attacker, which aims at bringing your network down. So when you get a lot of requests, your system will shut down and your network will go down. So that's what DDoS attacks are. Don't worry about going into the details of it. Service endpoints. This is something that I will show you. This is very important. This is something that I will let you know later on. And firewall. whether you want to enable it or not. This is something also that I will show you after some time. So firewall is not there in detail within this course, but service endpoints are very much important and are available in this course. So this I will tell you once I'm done with showing you how to create a virtual network. So this is how you create a virtual network through the portal. You give your virtual network name, its address space, its subscription, resource group, its location, subnet name, and there you go. That's how you will create a virtual network in onto Azure, right? Now how do you create it through PowerShell? That's another question, right? So let's create a virtual network through PowerShell. To create a virtual network through PowerShell, I'm shifting to my Windows PowerShell ISE, right? And here first thing that I have to do is first I have to log into Azure portal, right? So I will say login hyphen, what is the command to log into Azure? It's login hyphen Azure account, right? So that's the first command which I will write. I will not execute it because to create a virtual network you need to create a script. It's not a one line task that you can have. Then you need to use a variable. So what will be my variable? My variable will be $my virtual network. This is the name of my virtual network that I'm going to create. That's the name of my variable. The command to create a new virtual network is new hyphen AZ virtual network, right? What all information it needs? It needs a resource group name, correct? So in which resource group I'm going to keep it? I'm going to give my resource group name in here, which I'm going to use in here. So in my case, my resource group name is my resource group, my RG, right? It also requires another information, which is location. So location in my case is East US. I also require to give a name to this virtual network, right? What will be the name? Let's say the name is my VNet 2 because I've already created a virtual network with the name my VNet, right? Let's name it my VNet 1. Okay, and let's simply create it. Okay, let's go back to PowerShell while it is getting created. So the name of my another virtual network is my VNet 2, which I am creating through PowerShell. And then it requires what? It requires an address prefix, which is I'm going to select a different address prefix in here, a different IP address range in here, which is 10.0.0.0/16. So the first virtual network is of which you can say which address prefix. It is of 192.168.0.0/16. But the second one which I'm creating through PowerShell, it is of 10 series. Then once this command is executed, this command will create what? This command will create my virtual network with the address prefix 10.0.0.6. But still I haven't created my subnet yet, right? So then what I will do, I will first verify whether this subnet is created or not. So I will write a command which is get-az virtual network. This command will fetch me the information about my virtual network. Which virtual network? Which I have created, which is my VNet 2. Okay. The third command will tell me whether the virtual network 2 is created or not. Okay. Now I will execute the fourth command in which I will define my subnet information. So I will say I will create a variable which has a name $my subnet, and to create a subnet within a virtual network through PowerShell, the command is add-az virtual network subnet config. It is by default available in here. Why add? Because your virtual network is already created. You are simply adding the subnet information to that virtual network. So I will create a subnet within it. The name of my subnet will be, let's say, my subnet, right? And I have to give an address prefix for this. So address prefix for the subnet will be 10.0.0./27 or 25 or 24, whatever you want to give, right? And you want to attach it to a virtual network, so that virtual network information you have to give, it should be attached to my which virtual network, which I have just created through PowerShell. So my VNet2 will be the name of my virtual network. Okay. Now I need to check whether my subnet is created or not. So things are a little bit tricky in PowerShell, right? So to check whether my subnet is created or not, I will write a command which is get-virtual network subnet config. Again, right, and there I will give the name of my subnet which I have just created to verify whether it is created or not, along with the name of my virtual network with which it is associated. Okay, once it is verified, I will now have to associate my subnet with this virtual network. All right, so working in PowerShell was really good, right? Oh, sorry, working in Portal was really good, right? But in PowerShell, you might be a bit confused what all these commands are and what they are doing. All right, let's return to these commands again and see what they are doing. So I will execute my command one by one. Let's log in first. Login -az account. Everybody knows why this command is used, to log into your Azure account, right? That's what I'm doing as of now. I'm logging into Azure account. Through PowerShell, it asked me for my credentials, so that's what I'm going to provide to this pop-up. It says my password. All right, let's take my password. And after a bit of time, you will be logged in into the Azure portal. All right, when you see this message, that means you are inside the Azure portal. Let me write my second command. What my second command is doing, it is creating a variable with the name of my VNet, and within this, I am writing a command which is new-az virtual network. I'm saying create a virtual network within the resource group my-rg in the location East US. Name will be my VNet2 and address prefix will be 10.0.0.16. Okay, make sure before you run this you already have a resource group with the name my-rg. So let me just check whether my resource group is created with the name my-rg. Yes, it is available. You can also see that the first virtual network is already created, which I created through portal. Let's go back here and let's execute the second command. Once I executed the second command, what happened was, within the variable my VNet, the information about creating a new virtual network is secured. Okay, and a new virtual network has been created. But how do I verify whether this virtual network is created or not? For that, I need to run the command which is get-az virtual network and then the name of my virtual network. So let's see what information it gives to me. It says yes, my virtual network 2 exists inside the resource group my-rg. Location is East US. Address prefix is this, and it is created. If it would have given me any error, that meant that my virtual network was not created at that moment, right? Now let's go back in here and just refresh this. You will see that your virtual network 2 is created. It is there, which I just created through PowerShell, right? But if you go on the left hand side inside the setting into subnets, you will see there are no subnet attached because the PowerShell does not do it in one command only, right? The PowerShell requires multiple commands to do that. So again, I'm shifting back to my PowerShell and it says the next command is creating a variable my subnet within which it is storing a configuration which says add-az virtual network subnet config. The name of the subnet is given, the address prefix of the subnet is given, and to which virtual network it will be applied to, that information is also given. Let me execute this. One second, my VNet2. Okay. Instead of my VNet2 here, you have to give the variable. So you have to give the variable in here. instead of this, because you are storing the value of the virtual network in the variable now, right? There you go. I think it is done, right? Some warnings here and there, but that is fine. Let's see whether my subnet is created or not. So for getting the information about my subnet, I will write the command get hyphen virtual network subnet config. If it effectively gives me the answer, the output, then that means my subnet is created. Okay, again, I have used the wrong information here. In front of hyphen virtual network, you have to give the variable name, guys. You do not have to give the name of the virtual network, because name of the virtual network is not the value that you will put in front of the parameter hyphen virtual network. Here you have to put the entire variable that you have created within which you are storing the information about your virtual network. Okay, so let's execute this, and you will see that yes, a subnet with the name of my subnet is created with the address prefix standard 0.0.27. But if you go back to your Azure portal and you try to refresh your page and you try to see and go to subnets, you will see the subnet is still not there. Why the subnet is not there even when it is created? Because PowerShell doesn't work like that. PowerShell has simply created an object of a subnet, but that object is not linked with your virtual network. So now what I need to do is, my object for my subnet is created inside my variable my subnet, and then I'll use a pipe sign, and then I will say set hyphen AZ virtual network. This command I have to use to make sure that my subnet is attached to my virtual network. So the final command that I will execute is this one. Once this is done, you will see the subnet attached to the virtual network which I have just created through PowerShell. Let's refresh the page, and you will see the subnet attached in here. Did you see the subnet 10.0.0.27? Yes, that is the subnet that has been attached. So that is how you will create virtual network in the portal and with the PowerShell. That's why I said whatever task you do on Azure, do it with the PowerShell as well. It's very important for you to learn PowerShell. And probably after completing this course, I will do a course on PowerShell. So please uh, remain please be joined with this course itself. Do not leave the course, because there will be a lot of new courses that will be coming onto this page. So I will explain to you the whole PowerShell. Okay, so now I have created a virtual network both through a portal and through the PowerShell. Now the next thing in here is multiple network interface card in virtual machine. If you remember, when I showed you this diagram in Paint which says a virtual machine has a network interface card onto which an IP address is attached, I told you this network interface card is detachable. You can deassociate it from the virtual machine. But can a virtual machine have multiple NICs? In Azure, if you are creating a virtual machine can have more than one network interface card. Okay. Why do we need multiple network interface card inside a virtual machine? The reasons can be many. We need a virtual, maybe we are using a virtual appliance which requires different network interface card. Maybe we want to manage our network traffic. For that purpose we require a different network interface card. Or maybe we want to optimize our WAN, or we want to isolate our traffic. In that kind of scenario also multiple network interface card is required. For example, if you're using Zscaler inside your environment, or Cisco routers within your environment hosted inside Azure virtual machines, you might require to have different network interface card for isolation of traffic, right? Now, how do you make sure that a virtual machine can have multiple network interface card? So if you have seen my virtual machines video, I told you in that video that there are two things which are dependent upon the virtual machine size that you are choosing. So if you based upon the size of the virtual machine, you can define how many disks it supports and how many network interface card it can take. So based upon the size of the VM, you can define whether a virtual machine can take 2 network interface card, 4 network interface card, 8 network interface card, or more. It all depends upon the size of the virtual machine, right? Alright then, so now we'll create a VM with multiple NIC and see how it works. Now it has to be done through CLI, but I will show you how to do it through portal because CLI is something that you need to try. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go to a virtual machine. I do not have one, so I will create one. Alright, so I need to put it inside a resource group, my RG. That is the resource group within which I'm keeping it. Let's give it a name. Let's name it as VM1 East US. I don't want any availability set configured for it, or maybe just I'll keep it inside an availability set because I've already covered it. So let me create an availability set for this. If you do not know about what availability set are, make sure you see my video on virtual machines. It has been explained over there in detail. And I want to keep which image in here? Windows Server 2016, my favorite. Size, I'm selecting this one. Let's go to the size. Click on change size. So here, based upon which size you are selecting, your size represent how many network interface card you can use within it, right? So check which size supports how many network interface card, and then you will be good with it. Okay. So I'm selecting the by default size which is coming to me, or maybe I'll just make it big. And so let's say, let me just remove all those filters. And let me select a bigger size. Okay, A7 seems fine, but it's quite expensive. Let's go with A6, or maybe A5 is fine. Okay, so select a username in here. I'm giving my name. I'm giving it a password as well. And I require this virtual machine to be accessed through port 83389, so that should be enabled. All this information I have already told you inside the virtual machine part, so make sure you use that. Rest of the option I'll keep as same, and I'm going to keep this virtual machine in my virtual network 1, right? It is going to give it a public IP as well, and rest of the option I don't want to change, and review plus create, because I just wanted to show you how to create multiple network interface card. So I'm simply creating a virtual machine with default settings. I'm not changing any settings in here. Alright, so this will take some time for the virtual machine to be created. Meanwhile, while the virtual machine is getting created, make sure after this you also deploy a virtual network with subnet through Azure CLI. Although Azure CLI based questions won't be that much within your examination, but please ensure that with PowerShell you do so, because PowerShell is required, right? If you are not practicing your lab with PowerShell, the chances of you clearing the 103 exam will be lowered, because PowerShell plays a very vital role in Microsoft examination nowadays. So make sure it is available. And like I said, I will be going to create a link for you where you can fill a form and you can download the PPT and the book for this course. So I hope by today itself I will be able to do that. So give me some time guys, and maybe by today I will upload all my videos with that form from where you can download uh, this PPT and this book, and you can work on it on your own way. What you need to do is you need to fill the form, send me a screenshot on my email address which I have already shared in my previous videos, and then send me that screenshot, and then I will give you the link from where you can download the book and the PPT. Okay, so let's wait for this. Let's see how the multiple NICs are configured. And if you want to note down the PowerShell commandlets, I'm going back in here, but they will be mentioned within the book. So whoever gets the book, they don't need to remember these commands. These commands are already mentioned within the book, so there is no need for the same, right? And let's go back. So it is getting created, guys, and it's gonna take some time, so hold on. In case you have any questions, please let me know, and please do share these videos to anyone who is in need, because not everybody can afford a training. Maybe some of you are not working as of now, or some of you might not have a job, or maybe the training is too expensive. In all that kind of scenario, we can help each other by simply sharing the knowledge which we have with each other. So make sure you share this, because it doesn't if you help someone, it doesn't affect your own life. It will only make it better, right? So we should not keep ourselves away from helping each other. If we can help anyone in any form, that is the most beautiful thing that you can do in this entire world. So make sure you help each other, make sure you help people in understanding new technologies, as well as uh, in getting a job. So if anybody is in need of knowing AZ-103, they can simply get it from here. I will complete the course of this in here. Okay, so let's see, since till where we have gone so far. So my public address is created, my availability set is created, my storage account is created, my network security group is created, network interface is created, one network interface it has created by default, and finally the virtual machine is getting created. So once the virtual machine is finished creating, then I will show you that how multiple NICs can be attached. Now in here, when I created a virtual machine, you see the steps that followed. The virtual machine wasn't created as a first step, it was created as the last step. Why? Because virtual machine is dependent upon all of these previous you can say resources on Azure, because without these resources a virtual machine cannot be deployed. Virtual machine is deployed at the end of it. So even when you are creating a virtual machine from Azure portal, the first thing that will be deployed when you're creating a virtual machine through the portal is not the virtual machine itself. It will be deployed as the last task, because a virtual machine is dependent upon its network interface, its network security group, its storage account, diagnostic storage account, its availability set, its public IP address, etc. It will be deployed at the very last step. And I have told you a lot about the resource provider type. So you can see now, IP is a Microsoft.network resource type. It comes within the Microsoft.network resource provider. Availability set is within Microsoft.compute, same as Microsoft virtual machines. Storage account are within Microsoft.storage resource type provider. Then NSGs are again a part of network, and network interfaces are again part of a network, right? So you have multiple resource provider which are also given to you in here. If by default you faces any challenges while deploying a virtual machine on Azure or any resources on Azure, go to the deployment and check the operations detail. There you can see whether you were able to successfully create a resource or not. So that information will also be available to you in here. Okay, so let's see. It is still getting created, but I think virtual machine will now be visible to us. Yeah, it is visible to us, though it is still getting created on the back end. So we'll go to virtual machine, and to check the network interface card, we'll go to networking. And in the networking, you can see there is a network interface card, VM1129. With this network interface card, a public IP of this and a private IP of this is attached to. But can I attach another network interface card? Yes. For that, I need to create a network interface card. give it a name, let's say NIC2, give it associate, it will be by default associated with the same virtual network, but you can change the subnet in here if you have multiple subnets. You can give a private IP address, either dynamic, which it will automatically take, or static, which you want to give in here. Okay, so I'll say take another one automatically. NSGs you can leave as of now because I haven't explained NSGs to you. Private IP address IPv6, that's not required. It will ask for subscription, which is it has already taken, resource group, and the location. And then I will simply say create this network interface card 2. So now this network interface card 2 is getting created, and this network interface card 2 I can now attach to my virtual machine. Now, one network interface card is holding another set of IP address. Second network interface card is holding another set of IP address. Why and how can this be done? This can be done because the network interface card is already created, so I will simply attach it. Okay, you get a message in here. Virtual machine with a single network interface must be stopped deallocated before it can be updated to have multiple network interfaces and vice versa. Why do I get this error while attaching it? Because my virtual machine is there in the started stage. My virtual machine is running as of now. Can you attach a network interface card to a running machine? It will create a problem in Azure. That cannot be done if the virtual machine is running. So if virtual machine has one single network interface card and you try to attach another network interface card, it will fail. Why? Because a virtual machine with a single network interface card cannot attach a network interface card to itself unless it is stopped in the deallocated state, right? But if the virtual machine already has two or more network interface card attached to it, then you can attach network interface cards to it. Okay, because one of the network will be available. So I will simply stop and deallocate it. Yes. And once it is stopped and deallocated, then I can go to networking, and then I can try to attach the network interface, and then it will allow me to do so. So let's do this. Let's wait for this to detach. Okay, stopping can take some time. If you remember, I have already told you in the virtual machines class that when you stop a virtual machine from this button in here, then your virtual machine becomes stopped deallocated. Your virtual machine will stop costing only when you stop and deallocate it. If you simply shut down it from the OS level, the costing will still be there. Okay, so let's attach the network interface card from here and click on OK. And now your network interface card will be attached to your VM, and then you can spin it up and work with it, right? So successfully attached. So now I have two network interface card with two different set of IP addresses attached to it, which will act as two different ways to access this virtual machine. I can segregate traffic based upon this network interface card. I can apply NSGs to these network interface card, which I will let you know in a while. But this is how you attach multiple network interface card to a virtual machine. Alright guys, so this was it. In the next lesson, we will talk about IP addressing and endpoints, which is also very important. So here I will discuss service endpoints with you, which I've left in the first lesson. So please be there, and I will start this session in a couple of hours. Thank you, and I'll be back. Bye.